this is Flea. I decided to talk about science instead because I have more of an idyllic memory for that, or so I think. Anyways, today we're going to talk about nuclear fission, simplified, and nuclear fusion, which will be simplified. That being said, this was done by Otto Hahn, I think that's the guy's name, who discovered this nuclear energy by splitting atoms, which is fission, which you would just like go like this. This would be a neutron, a stray neutron, and this would be the atom. Whack. The atom's nucleus, and then it would make this extreme heat and energy, so you just go wham. Anyways, so that's that in a nutshell. The most naturally occurring radioactive stuff is that I know of is radium, and then it goes all the way up to uranium 235, I believe it is. And that's the atomic number. I also agree that it would be. The atomic number is 92 because it has 92 electrons. And you can imagine an atom that size will be pretty unstable once you get to the 80s and the 90s range in the periodic table. You'll find that the atoms are going to be a little more unstable. Just like if you have too much on your plate, you're going to be unstable too. So it's basically the same thing. And then one neutron, and this would be like an atom's nucleus. There you go. Now, that's basically how it is. If you kick a soccer ball, if you have two soccer balls here, and you have one there, let's say the two soccer balls that are put together are a nucleus of an atom. The stray soccer ball you kick, it's going to make a chain reaction. So you imagine that. To be said, it's not very fun to go through if you've ever seen these types of explosions, these 100 megaton, 1,000 megaton, even 100 million. Sometimes they go to astronomical lengths with the megatons. Like I think there's 50 megatons and 100 and then 1,000, and of course varying in between. The first one that was ever used was Little Boy, and it was used on Hiroshima. I think we all remember how that little shit show turned out. It wasn't a little shit show. It turned out to be the worst thing on the planet for humans. I'm going to just say this. I think we all have learning disabilities and learning difficulties, just to put it politely, when it comes to learning from our past. I don't think we always learn from it anyways. So we got ourselves a little problem in Hiroshima where people are being incinerated in the center, and these people they have atomic rain dropping down on them, or they get burned severely. And you can imagine that this is not a good show, and the further out, the most likely you would have cancer or leukemia. Sorry, I stuttered. That being said, leukemia is a blood cancer that causes certain white blood cells to act up and stuff, and it's not good, from my understanding. And then you know what cancer is if you've lost a family member from cancer. Anyways, so that's like out in the boonies, the people would have cancer and leukemia. The children would have learning disabilities and physical issues as well. For me, I've heard of also this place called the Polygon in Central Asia. I can't remember the exact name of this place, but anyways, this place is basically irradiated. It's a polygon. It's like a polygon of irradiated space. Anyone living near this area, let's just say they would end up having cancer and leukemia, and if they have children, they end up with learning difficulties and physical difficulties, in other words, disabilities, and that's basically how this, and I'm trying to sugarcoat this in a way that's nice, but it's not nice to have these different disabilities. If you ever have a disability, a learning or physical or mental disability, you know it's not fun for the most part. Can lead to a lot of inspiration, but can lead to a lot of aggravation at times. So the people at near the polygon would be around, and they would see that their kids would have these disabilities, mental, physical, and learning disabilities, because of they lived around this irradiated space. Now, I don't know who, I think it was the Russians that tested it on that area, so I don't want to judge any country. So, and now that was just with nuclear fission bombs. I believe that was it? And then we started getting into, as far as Fat Man was concerned, and the Cold War, we got into nuclear fusion, which is you make a real hot, make it so hot. Here we have to make it hot because we don't have the pressure like a sun or a star or like Jupiter to make the heat, to crush the new protons into submission. So you can guess where that, and it comes from nuclear fission. You have to flick the bean to make more beans, flick at each other, and then you get enough heat to make fusion, which is fusing the different atom things like protons. And as I said, it starts with fusion first, then it goes to fission, then fusion. Sorry, got my brain farting again. So it's fission, which is the breakup of atoms. You want to make a chain reaction before you end up deciding to do fusion on Earth, at least, because we're not the sun. And because the sun has a lot of pressure to it. It has a lot of pressure, it'll crush those atoms into submission and fuse them, and it makes more heat. But it also has to be created by fission as well, which is kind of ironic, but it does make sense. Okay. As I said, the two highest naturally occurring, I don't know about plutonium, but uranium is the highest level of electrons and protons, and you can imagine that that's going to be unstable. As I said, try juggling so many things at once mentally or even physically, too many balls, and then the next thing you know, you're going to lose your cool. So you can imagine that, for example. Also, so that's why these atoms from radium, all these radioactive elements in the periodic table, whether they're man-made or God-made, are actually creating. They're very unstable because they have a lot to do with them. They have too much electrons and protons, and they can't stay stable. So if one neutron hits the one, they'll go nuts. And that's basically one thing. And you can imagine that this was how the universe may have been created too. I don't like to give out God's secrets, but that's basically it. Is that one particle flinging into a bunch of them, into a bunch of protons and neutrons. They break, and then the heat. And as far as different bombs were concerned, there was the atom bomb, which was severe. Like, they used them a lot in the Manhattan Project, because mainly one of the places that they tested was named after Manhattan, New York. And they would go to New Mexico to test their stuff, their nuclear weapons, and it would just be the atom bombs. And then we got into the hydrogen bombs, which is just two simple atoms, which is hydrogen. And I'm not sure how I think this is fusion, and where you have to fuse the bastards together to make, and you have to make a lot of heat, and what you want to do is you have to have one radioactive element next to another, so when that one heats up, the little neutrons have nowhere else to go. They are about 10,000 megatons. I'm not sure, but they're pretty bright. They're brighter than the sun. And then there's the tsar bomba, which was created by the Soviet Union, which is a real shit show in itself. You literally have to get the hell out of Dodge when tsar bomba is dropped, and they can only do that in the Arctic Circle, in a little island. I can't remember the name of the island, but I know about the atoms and stuff. That being said, I remember that they dropped the tsar bomba, and as the airplane was getting ready to get the hell out of Dodge, the shockwave hit the airplane. The airplane lost control, and they soon got control of the airplane before it became too serious. I must say that that was a better, gentler way of testing nuclear weapons in this case, because there was no one there. There was no one there, so we didn't have to worry about cancers, injuries, mutations, disabilities, and stuff. I'm not saying disabilities are bad, but if you can avoid, especially if you're being an asshole, let's just try to avoid them. Anyways, so we don't know how big these, and the tsar bomba is actually hotter, 7 times hotter than the sun. I think it's a 100 million, like a million degrees or so, whereas the other two were about 7 to 3,000 degrees. This one can kick up a lot of dirt. And you're wondering what will happen if this whole planet decides to ignite a nuclear war. Well, first there's going to be a lot of fires. There's going to be fires. A lot of fires that cause, and of course the mushroom clouds don't fucking help. But really, the idea, the fires will cause more smoke, radioactive smoke. And if you're in a place where there is a winter, like Canada, northern US, Russia, some of China, Central Asia, what have you, that has snow in the wintertime, you're fucked. Because within a few months of time, there will be nuclear winter after these fires will go completely insane. Radioactive fires will go insane. You also have radioactive rain. But really the fires they set themselves on fire, kind of like the burning bush. If you ever heard about the burning bush, you ever seen Prince of Egypt, and there's this burning bush that talks about only these don't talk. And they just multiply into one certain area. Now, if the whole world were to get pissed off with each other, and we ended up losing our shit with each other, and we end up going into nuclear war, complete, total nuclear war, these fires will cause a nuclear winter because it'll block out the sun. It'll literally block out the sun for God only knows how long. And you can imagine this is how the dinosaurs went with the asteroid hitting the damn planet in the Yucatan Peninsula. And it's basically the same deal. We were trying to destroy each other. Have we learned anything from our own other misdeeds? I'm starting to wonder if this whole planet has a learning disability when it comes to this kind of stuff, because it's like, you're still making them? You're still making these things, and it drives me insane that they would make these things. And now they have IBCMs and stuff like that. You can imagine that this is not going to be cute if we all get pissed off with each other. And that's that. To be said, it's a very disturbing idea that the whole world would be plunged in a nuclear war, and one big mushroom cloud. So you can imagine that this would be pretty bad. And then the nuclear winters are pretty bad. They can wipe out half, depending on where you're located. I would be screwed because I live in Canada. So I'd be more susceptible to a nuclear winter. But it depends on how much dust particles and crap are kicked up in the air. So you just have to take that into consideration. And enough of those things can cause a nuclear winter, which is pretty disturbing, to be honest with you. I don't exactly like that idea, that could happen. Now we got these, tsar bombas, situations that we have that are really big, but small, but pretty big. And you're going to learn from this channel. I was going to talk about shamanism, but anyways, this is one of my other passions. Anyway, is science. Anyway, so I talk about science because it's nature. Anyway, so we have these, and this is human nature as faultiest when we're making IBCMs and crap like that, and tsar bombas and fat mans and little boys and nuclear weapons, other nuclear weapons. We don't want to have to deal with that, but it is hanging over our heads. Maybe it is a good reason it is hanging over our heads, because then we cannot go at each other's throats, knowing that if we do go at each other's throats, it'll cause the destruction of mankind, which is not good. So in a way, we have this hanging over our head, and it's the ultimate punishment for being an asshole to each other. So I don't think it would be a very good idea. That I think it's the only thing that is not plunging everyone else into war, because if we did, we'd be using these giblet-headed things called nuclear weapons, and I just don't really like them. Although the idea of nuclear fission and fusion have been used for medicine, as well as to help keep our food safe, irradiating bacteria off our food, radiating chicken eggs so we don't have to eat an actual bird unless it's an actual chicken breast, and even keeping our airport safe. Some of these X-ray machines use radiation to penetrate and look through our luggage. So this is a good thing in some cases, but there's this one big bad turd that we cannot seem to overlook, which is nuclear war. And that is basically that. And that is it in a nutshell. This has been going on since World War II, end of World War II, I guess. And this has been still going on. God only knows who is making what. And it honks my horn, to be honest with you, like literally a punch in the nose, and it pisses me off that people are not learning from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, that being said, feel free to subscribe, like, hit the bell button, and I'll come up with something sciencey tomorrow. Bye.